Game Week 34 wildcarders, I haven't forgotten about you. Welcome to FPL Mate, my name is Dan, and today I'm going to give you all the tools you need to build the perfect Game Week 34 wildcard team. Okay, so today we are going to be building a wildcard team, and although we will be building a team in today's video, I also do want to make sure that I'm giving you all of the information for you guys to make the best wildcard teams yourself, all of the tools, all of the information you need to do exactly that. So I want to start off right here, guys, and this is basically my opinion of what I want to try and do with a wildcard team today, what I am trying to achieve. So I've got kind of 5 criteria here that I want to meet with a wildcard draft, and hopefully a few of you guys are feeling the same kind of things. These are the kind of things you want as well. So what we want to do is we want to cover Game Week 34 well, so we can have that immediate gain with our wildcard teams. Make sure we are capitalizing on all of the great fixtures in this very game week coming up. We also want to maximize the players from the most likely double Game Week 36 scenarios, with some cover for the less likely scenarios as well. And we're going to cover that. Don't worry. We're going to talk about what exactly that means. We also want to have strong bench rotations to cover blank Game Week 37, if there is one, and the difficult fixtures that your players might have throughout the rest of the season. And I also want to make sure we are flexible enough to adjust to new information that we gain after the Game Week 34 deadline. We don't know about blanks in 37. We don't know about doubles in 36. We can make assumptions, we can make predictions right now, but we are going to get far more valuable information for after the deadline for Game Week 35. And if you're wildcarding right now, that's not good enough. So we need to be flexible for that new information that is coming our way. And finally, I do want to give some consideration to chip usage in Game Week 36. So if you are on, you want to play your assistant manager, bench boost, triple captain, something like that, then yeah, I want to make sure that we are covering that as well. We can do something to help you guys out there. So let's start off right here, guys. And this is a table of the fixtures with the likely double and blank game weeks between now and the end of the season. So this is what we got here. And I think there's a really good way of trying to build a wildcard team taking these into consideration. So there are 3 types of teams for the rest of the season when it comes to fixtures, who has doubles, who has blanks, etc, etc. So we have Bournemouth, Nottingham Forest, Tottenham, West Ham and Wolves. These 5 teams all have a potential double in Game Week 36, but also actually play at their fixture in Game Week 34 as well. So you can get players from these teams who play right now, but also have that chance of a double later. We'll have a look at exactly what the odds are, who is more likely, who is less likely, in just one moment. But first of all, I think this is a really good place to start, and picking players from these teams could be really, really useful to make sure you do have players ready for blank game weeks right now, but also you're prepared for Game Week 36 as well. So really nice. The one exception here might be Tottenham Hotspur, because even though they play now and have a good chance of a double in 36, they play Liverpool away from home in Game Week 34, and it's quite difficult to pick out FPL assets from Spurs in particular. So it might be that really you're focusing more on Bournemouth, Forest, West Ham and Wolves to make up a big part of your wildcard team this week. Next up, we've got bench players with possible doubles later, but blank right now. So these are kind of players you want to put in your wildcard team and bench. You've got 4 slots on your wildcard for the bench, 1 goalkeeper, 3 outfield players. So you are limited for how many players you can pick in this category. So this category is Aston Villa, Crystal Palace and Man City. These 3 teams do not have a Game Week 34 fixture, so they blank right now, but they do have a chance of a double in 36. So we want to pick a few of these players primarily on the bench. I do wonder, in particular, if we focus more on Man City and Aston Villa rather than Crystal Palace, just because Man City and Aston Villa do have that higher chance of a double in Game Week 36 compared to Crystal Palace, who have a slightly lower chance. Again, we will tell you exactly what the chances are. And finally, we have Arsenal. And I don't think it's very easy to pick Arsenal players if you are on a wild card right now, because they don't have a fixture in Game Week 34, and they also have 0 chance of any doubles or blanks for the rest of the season. Next 3 game weeks are not particularly amazing for them anyway, and we could see some rotation in Game Week 35 as Arsenal look to really focus on the Champions League as well. So therefore, Arsenal are not going to be included in today's wildcard team with no fixture in 34 and no double later. Let's move on and have a look at the odds. So assuming the Game Week 37 FA Cup final clashes are moved into the Game Week 36 midweek slot rather rather than the Game Week 37 midweek, there are going to be some double game weeks this week. And by the way, guys, this the chance of this happening, the chance of getting these doubles and blanks are improved if Aston Villa beat Crystal Palace in the FA Cup semi-final, because Aston Villa are due to play Spurs in Game Week 37, and if Spurs make the Europa League final, they are not going to be able to go and play in the Game Week 37 midweek. That fixture will have to be moved into the Game Week 36, and therefore, if Aston Villa versus Spurs is moved into Game Week 36, that makes it pretty likely that the Premier League will do the fair thing, and the doublers from the other fixture, the other side of the FA Cup semi-final, whoever wins that game will most likely also move into Game Week 36, just to make things fair, so both teams who make the FA Cup final have an equal amount of rest. But anyway, guys, what we're going to see is we're going to see one pair of either Nottingham Forest and West Ham or Man City and Bournemouth. We're going to see one of these two pairs of teams. If this scenario comes true, we're going to see one of these double in 36 and blank in 37. Now, the current odds are 72% that Man City and Bournemouth will have the double and blank, and 28% chance of the Forest and West Ham having the double and blank. So you can kind of see it's less likely, pretty unlikely that the pair of Forest and West Ham are the least likely two teams to double. They do still have a chance of a double in 36, but these two teams have the smallest chance. And then after that, we're going to have one pair from this other pair, I guess, a pair of pairs. So a 40% chance of seeing Crystal Palace and Wolves have a double in 36 and blank in 37, and a 60% chance of Aston Villa and Spurs having a double in 36 and a blank in 37. So this is what we're looking at right now. So again, not only are we trying to focus on some teams who maybe don't blank now, but have a chance of doubling in 36, but also we're going to try and weight it towards those teams more likely, which are going to be Bournemouth, Aston Villa, Spurs, Man City there as well. So two criteria here: the teams most likely to have doubles, and also the teams who don't blank now but could double later. Two factors there, and that's what we're going to try and factor in. So with all that said, guys, you obviously we got to start building a wildcard team. That's exactly what we're going to do right away. Now we've got that admin stuff out of the way. So here we go, guys. Let's start off in goal. And we have got Kepa Arrizabalaga, 4.6 million, 3.3% owned. And we did mention we might be looking at some Bournemouth players, since they've got a pretty high chance of a double in Game Week 36. But also, Bournemouth, not such a bad fixture against Manchester United, a Manchester United team who we expect to rotate and prioritise Europa League rather than the Premier League. Man United have nothing left to play for in the Premier League. So Bournemouth very much still do, because they do still have a good chance of European football next season. It's going to be Conference League or Europa League, depending on various bits and bobs, but still good chance of European football. So Bournemouth full strength, Man United weakened team. But there is a bigger reason why I'm going for Kepa in this position, and this is why, and it's due to this rotation here. So what we have, you're going to see soon, guys, that on the bench we have Pickford, and the two goalkeepers in this wildcard team are Kepa and Pickford, and they work really well as a pair. Every time Bournemouth has a good fixture, Everton have a bad fixture, and vice versa. So you can keep rotating these two goalkeepers. So Kepa, you're going to play against Bournemouth in 34. Pickford, you'll play against Ipswich again at home in Game Week 35. In Game Week 36, what you're really doing is you're holding out for a double game week for Kepa. But even if you don't get a double game week, we still do have Everton against Fulham, which isn't too bad. After that, Game Week 37, assuming Bournemouth blank because they've just doubled in Game Week 36, then you have Everton against Southampton. But even if Bournemouth don't double in 36, don't blank in 37, again, you have that Pickford against Southampton at home. So a really nice fixture. And the final fixture is going to be Game Week 38, where you will go back to Kepa playing at home against Leicester. So you have the three newly promoted teams all at home with these two goalkeepers, plus a weakened Manchester United at home, plus a double game week in 36. So this pair of goalkeepers works super, super well to rotate. And I hope you guys like that. I know some people will be like, I just really want Sells in my team. I really want Pope. I really want someone else. If that is the case, completely fair enough, guys. But I figured out a nice rotation, so I thought I would include it in this team today. So there you go. That's the first player on the team sheet. Let's have a look at the defenders next. And we've gone for Trippier, Milenkovic, Aït-Nouri, and Sessegnon. And you can see here that we have got a combination of players with really nice fixtures this week. So Trippier, Aït-Nouri and Sessegnon, they're going to be in a lot of free hit teams, actually. So these are going to be some really nice players to cover you for this week. We do have Milenkovic here as well, just to cover that Nottingham Forest defence. Whilst we haven't got Sells, we do still have that Forest defence cover if you do need it. And we also cover the unlikely scenario in which Forest beat Man City in the FA Cup semi-final and therefore have a double against Leicester and West Ham, which would be really nice, in game week 36. Even if Forest have a single game week in 36, it's still against Leicester at home, so it's a nice pick to have. Now, obviously, we've got 4 defenders in this team right now, and some people might be a little skeptical about that, want to see more attacking players on the pitch, but I actually do think that this week, game week 34, is a pretty good week generally to have a 4 at the back formation. And I've even seen some free hitters play with 4 at the back this week. So it's definitely viable. And this is sort of why, guys. So we've got the clean sheet odds from Rob T FPL on screen. And as you can see, we have the likes of Newcastle, Chelsea, Wolves, Liverpool, Fulham, Brighton and Bournemouth, all above 30% chance of a clean sheet. This is really high. So this is one of those game weeks where actually we see a lot of pretty high chances of clean sheets. So generally, it's actually not such a bad one. Now, obviously, also a lot of the defenders that we've picked in this free hit, in this wildcard team, the defense feels like a free hit team, but in this wildcard team, they also are attacking defenders, you know. So we've got the likes of Trippier, Aït-Nouri and Sessegnon, who have been some of the better attacking defenders recently, all fullbacks. Milenkovic, obviously, is another player who has a bit of aerial threat. So it's a nice defense, and I think it is a good week to go for at the back. And by going 4 at the back, that means you can have a few more attacking players who blank now, but in the future have those really nice high chance of double game weeks. And you're going to see the bench in not so long, guys. So after that, let's move on into the midfield where we see Salah, Bowen, Barnes and Cliver. So again, we've got a couple of players like Salah and Barnes, really nice for game week 34. And some other players who are maybe nicer a little bit longer term, like Bowen and Cliver, who again have that chance of the double game week later down the line. We see the Bowen with Man United and Forest as a potential double if Forest beat City in the semi-finals, but we also see Cliver. So one of Bowen or Cliver should have a double in 36 if everything goes to plan. That's kind of what we're thinking here. So you're going to get one double game week midfielder there already automatically. Very nice. We have Salah, who is just your nice, safe player, your premium player, a captain option for game week 34 as well. He's going to be the most popular captain against Spurs. But we also have Harvey Barnes here. Now, Barnes is an interesting one because actually, sort of from game week 35, maybe 36, maybe even 37 onwards, the fixtures aren't as good, particularly for an attacker from Newcastle. So what Barnes is here for, and you could go for Murphy instead, by the way, if you prefer Murphy. Murphy works here too. We've got Barnes as a kind of a placeholder, because obviously after game week 35, we're going to have new information. Before the game week 35 deadline, we're going to have new information. We're going to know who is going to be doubling, who is not going to be doubling. So it could be that we see Aston Villa a confirmed double in game week 36. There's a great opportunity to move Barnes to a Rodgers, a Rashford, you know, someone like that. If Crystal Palace win their semi-final and, you know, it ends up being a double in 36 for them, then you can move Barnes to an Eze or a Sarr. You can go for a midfielder from Man City. You go for a De Bruyne if you want to, a Savinho perhaps. More likely De Bruyne. But you kind of get my idea here. In Forest, you can move to Elanga. So Barnes is really nice for right now, but with the idea that he is only in here temporarily. And when we get information after the game week 34 deadline, we can start thinking about, are we going to move Barnes in game week 35? Can we wait till game week 36 before moving him onto a double game week midfielder? You have all those options and hopefully be able to gain a lot from Barnes in the short term, considering he is in such good form in the short term. So with that said, guys, let's move up to the forward position. We've got Alexander Isak against Ipswich. I think he is good enough that he can score in any game week, but again, he is maybe a player you would consider moving on to a Chris Wood, for example. If Chris Wood has his double in game week 36, again, that is pretty unlikely. But if it were to happen, then you might want to move Isak over to a Wood, and that could be really nice. Cunha is here just in case Crystal Palace win and, we get a double there. But also Leicester at home right now, even Man City, Leicester away, even Man City, is it Leicester home or away? I actually need to double check this. It's Leicester at home, isn't it? So it's a good fixture here for Cunha, really. And some people even thinking about captaining Cunha. It's up to you, whether you want to do that. But after that, we have that potential double in 36 if Crystal Palace beat Aston Villa. So that's going to be something to consider as well. So finally, let's move on to the bench. We have got Pickford, as we mentioned earlier, for that bench rotation for the goalkeepers. We've got Marmoush, blank now, but he's probably, I think we would probably say, the best Man City asset for your FPL teams. So if he gets a double in game week 36, you're going to be looking at Marmoush. You're going to be thinking, if you have a triple captain, you maybe go there. But even just for regular captaincy, I think Marmoush is perfect, which is why I wanted to include Marmoush in this squad, because yeah, he is going to be a player you're almost certainly going to want, whether Man City double or not, because the fixtures around that are really good for Man City as well, which is why we've got Gvardiol as well here. So 2 Man City players, highest chance of a double in terms of most likely to progress to the FA Cup final. Really nice fixtures, whether or not you get that double. So it makes a lot of sense to have a couple of Man City players on your bench. And you kind of have to fill the rest of the players with the other players, the blank, I suppose. And Rodgers is going to be one of those players. I think maybe you could go for Rashford here instead. But we've gone for Rodgers for security. Good chance, very, very good chance of a double in game week 36. So he is going to be another player who's going to be useful later down the line. So what we have here, guys, is a team that is looking pretty strong, I think, for game week 34, with plenty of players with potential double game weeks. And let's have a look at exactly which players will be having doubles in this exact team. So again, assuming the game week 37 FA Cup final clashes are moved into the game week 36 midweek, what you're going to have is one set from this first pair. So Bowen and Milenkovic, 28% chance of having them for a double in 36. But on the other side, we have Marmoush, Gvardiol, Kluivert and Kepa, 4 players for the more likely scenario in which Man City and Bournemouth have the double in game week 36. On the other hand, it's a little bit more difficult because it's a more even chance on either side of this clash. But also, it's like Crystal Palace, you probably don't want to pick as much because they don't have a fixture now and they have a weaker chance. But Wolves, you know, they have a good fixture now and they have the weaker chance, but still, because they have a good fixture now, it is probably worth going for that pump. On the Aston Villa side, it's difficult to fit more Aston Villa players in because I think you have to prioritise going for your Man City players on your bench. So you can't really overload on Aston Villa players on your bench. So we only got one. We only got Rodgers here. So in many ways, you might be hoping that it's going to be Man City progressing. And of course, with Bournemouth. And on the other side, Crystal Palace beating Aston Villa. And then, of course, getting Wolves there. However, again, like I said before, if Aston Villa beat Crystal Palace, that does improve our chances overall of double game weeks and blank game weeks. So there's that. I think it's also a really nice idea to just hedge your bets here. Take some players from either side. Because if you haven't got any other chips remaining, yes, you might have a lot of players for double game week 36, but in game week 37, you're going to be screwed because these exact players are going to be then blanking. The same teams that double in 36 will blank in game week 37. So I don't think you want to overload on doubling players, but if you hedge your bets here and pick players from either side of the coin, if you like, then you can have a good chance of getting plenty of doublers, but also you're not going to be screwed over in game week 37 if you've got a load of blanking players. So that's kind of the idea and methodology there. So going back to this team, we've got Salah as the captain, we've got Isak as the vice captain. I think that's a pretty template, pretty boring thing to do, but it's popular and it's safe for a very good reason. If you want to go a bit crazy, of course, guys, that is on you, but Salah is going to be the most popular captain pick this week for sure. This is what the team looks like. It costs 98.6 million, so actually pretty cheap. You could maybe upgrade things a little bit. One way you could do that, for example, is you could maybe, instead of Rodgers on your bench, you could have De Bruyne here on your bench instead and triple up on Man City on your bench to really try and, bet on Man City making the FA Cup final and having their fixture move to game week 36. Really bet on that. So that's definitely a possibility as well there. Of course, with goalkeepers, you can maybe go for a Martinez or someone like that there if you wanted some Aston Villa cover. But of course, the rotation doesn't work quite as well as the Pickford Kepa rotation, which works really, really nicely. So let me take you through this team week by week and show you how it works, how it unfolds, and how it it really is good for every week, really. So we are, of course, back on the My Team tool from Fantasy Football Hub. If you want to check this tool out for yourself and start planning out your team and get access to all of the great tools at Hub, do use the link in the description. It's there for you to have a free trial. It could be the perfect time to use that free trial now, actually, guys, just to make sure you can plan out the rest of your season quite well on a wildcard. So this is what we're looking at right now, guys. So this Game Week 34 team is exactly as we kind of just already spoke about. Yeah, literally no change here, but we need to go through week by week. So let's go to Game Week 35 here. And what we will probably see is the likes of Sessignon against Aston Villa away and Aït-Nouri away against Man City go onto the bench. Cliver away against Arsenal also to the bench. And we're going to start doing our goalkeeper rotation here as well, with Pickford coming in for Arrizabalaga. Once again, Salah is the captain here, but yeah, I think that's just because Salah is always going to be a captain option. But you could go crazy here. You really could. By this point, you will, of course, have confirmed information about doubles and blanks for Game Week 36 and Game Week 37, or at least I hope you will. I would be very surprised if you didn't by this point. So that would be what your team looks like Game Week 35. Again, very strong, not just for Game Week 34, but also Game Week 35, as we can now move to a 3 at the back formation with all of our players now available, having blanked the previous week. Going into Game Week 36 will look a little bit like this, although we don't know who is going to be doubling, who is going to be blanking. So it's going to be one of Gvardiol or Milenkovic. So if Milenkovic is not doubling, you may want to switch him out for Sessignon here, for example. And if Aït-Nouri doesn't double, you could still play him here if you wanted to against Brighton. That at home, that's absolutely fine there as well. In midfield, we've got Salah, of course, with potential doubles for Rodgers, Cliver, and Bowen. Of course, it will only be one of Cliver or Bowen doubling here. So it could be if you've made a Barnes transfer, whoever doesn't double out of Cliver and Bowen, they will be switched out for whoever your Barnes replacement is, whether that's from a Man City player or a Crystal Palace player, whatever. So the other player will go onto the bench there. Up front, we'll have Marmoush, who we think will probably have a double. We've got Isak and Cunha. Of course, again, if one of these players, most likely Isak or Cunha, if one of these guys does not, if Cunha doesn't have a double, you maybe consider swapping out one of Isak or Cunha for someone else, potentially, even Chris Wood, maybe Watkins. Is that acceptable? Maybe. But yeah, you're going to have options there to switch your forwards as well. So it's up to you what you do in the end, but one of Barnes, Isak, or Cunha is probably going to make way in Game Week 36 for a new player. In Game Week 35, you'll have one free transfer. Game Week 36, you'll have another. So you should have 2 free transfers by this point. But maybe don't overload too much on the transfers, and be aware that the more doublers you have in 36 means the more blankers you can have in Game Week 37. Now, in Game Week 37, some of these players will have fixtures just because they have no chance of doubles and blanks anyway, but also keeping a few players around, even if you bought them in because of a potential double in 36, even if they don't end up doubling there, could end up being a good thing. It gives you extra cover for Game Week 37. It's unlikely that you'll have to play Trippier, but he is there if you do need him. You could even transfer out Trippier in Game Week 37 if you have the transfers. I would think a lot of people would be looking to actually take hits in Game Week 37 as well, not just to prepare for a blank Game Week 37, but also try and take one last roll of the dice for the final 2 game weeks of the season. So hits in Game Week 37, I think, are going to be fine. I think that's going to be very common indeed. But we don't know who's going to be playing. We don't know who is going to be blanking in that week. And finally, Game Week 38. We have here, and this is probably how I'd look to line up for the final game week of the season, along with any changes you've made between Game Week 35 and 38. So Kepa against Leicester, Trippier against Everton, Gvardiol against Fulham, Aït-Nouri against Brentford. Into the midfield, we'll have Salah against Palace, Cliver against Leicester, Barnes against Everton, and Bowen against Ipswich. Pretty nice there. Isak against Everton, Cunha against Brentford, and Marmoush against Fulham. But again, you can have more transfers. You can go for different players if you want to. Looking at some of the higher predicted points, you can maybe go for someone like Saka for the final game week of the season. That's definitely a possibility there. Anyone take a punt on Palmer, maybe, possibly. Evan Nielsen is another player who could potentially come into your team, maybe in the previous game weeks if he does get his double in 36 as well. And Brian Mbeumo is always going to be a player on the menu. So you have got plenty of options, plenty of flexibility moving forward towards the final game weeks of the season. But we get there from a point of being prepared for different possibilities and having flexibility to adjust based on what the actual outcomes are. And considering we don't have guaranteed information until after the Game Week 34 deadline, that is going to be super important. So that is what I've got for you guys for a Game Week 34 wildcard. Hopefully there was plenty of useful information in here. Even if you don't like the exact team, it's going to help you make your very own teams. If you did enjoy this one, please do let me know any thoughts on the team. Do let me know any other players you think are must-haves on a wildcard. I'd love to hear from you guys. Do drop a like if you enjoyed this one. Subscribe if you're new around here. Feel free to also check out another video on the channel. Plenty of other videos for Game Week 34. But if not, I will see you tomorrow for the final decisions video for my personal free hit team. I'll see you later, mates. Bye-bye.